human, if you like, the human, the aesthetic, and the ethic, the technical. Design is the bit that tries to put them back together. It tries to repair the broken part. It's basically, in this sense, a reparative activity. But look at the other side of the dialectic. In this same context, design is impossible, because in relation to any of the individual moments, aesthetics, ethics, and technology, design cannot exist, or only as less than. From the point of view of aesthetics, design isn't really art, it's just applied art, it's crude, it's random trade, mathematics is really the fine artists design. From the point of view of ethics, design is just objects. Feelings, beliefs, structures, norms. From the side of techniques or technologies, as one engineer said to me in a school which I worked with, in the design school you spend 4 years teaching somebody how to design a postage stamp. Get the sarcasm. Engineers are real people, designers are just professionals. That's the tension. But this is only part of a much wider set of problems. Think of the wider set of problems of this split. Okay? Once we split aesthetics, ethics, and technology, and we accept that these realms belong to themselves, we allow each realm to belong in specialization, but not in interrelationship with other realms. We tend to split the spheres among modes of rationality, so that technology becomes the site for objectivating reason, how we measure everything. Ethics for moral reasoning, aesthetics for subjective expression. This sounds superficially all right. It's what we think is the norm. Aesthetics dealing with feelings. If you're an artist, you deal with emotions and feelings. If you're a scientist, you deal with memory. Until we realize, for example, that this means that ethical reasoning is therefore confined to the ethical realm, the personal and the social. The only cognitive rationality is within objectification, which is itself split from the subjective world of ethics, while the aesthetic is reduced to the expressive realm and to operate wholly in the subjective sphere. Aesthetics has no social reason or social efficacy, just as ethics has no objective reason, just as objectivating rationality has no subjective dimension. So begin to see the problems. Once we fragment, we pay a price. There's no free lunch. We gain in specialization, we lose in interrelationships. In practical terms, this means, for example, that the realm of making and the making of things, or the realms of this, do not feel that it's consequent upon them to think ethically about what they make. Technologists think purely technologically. Artists think purely artistically. Nobody need think ethics. If you do put ethics in, for example, then you have to put it in kind of from outside. In relationship to technology, this gives a particular spin, because technology freed from ethics almost in any case naturally sells itself to power in order that it can be realized. In the early 20th century, nuclear, that was, for example, governments. So technology sold themselves to governments. In the 21st century, technology sells itself to companies who will actually realize. So technology, in a sense, then, because it doesn't have its own ethics. It doesn't have a project except itself, its own autonomy. So we're beginning to see problems, but we can even go wider than this. We can even say that in this whole process of creating technology, an inversion, what I call an inversion, happens. Do it best in the diagram. If we think about it, if we take this as the widest sphere of human nature, then technology happens as a small sphere inside it. Okay? This is specialist technology. This is all human. What happens in our world now is an inversion. What we really have now is technology and a small sphere of things. So this is done. So we've got what I call inversion. And it's an inversion because this is actually more fundamental than that. know that now. So that's a problem. And there is, in any case, a problem of a more general reductionism. Once technology becomes subject to science, scientific law determines the artifact itself is kind of right, or the artifact becomes a device. So we've got these kind of splits. And in fact, what happens then is the way that technology then organizing itself not for us, but actually against us. For this kind of standard, which the bit that Adorno gets to, if you read that great paragraph, and if you only read one thing about the Regents this week, then for God's sake, read that small Adorno paragraph, which has the great line in it that all of you will recognize, which is this. So Adorno's talking about here is the way that technology works on us, kind of below consciousness, a kind of way of kind of making us act without even consciousness. Jean Lanier talks a lot about this too. Now all this tells us that what we're seeing here is an incredible tension between technology as a concept and technology as it works out now socially, culturally, psychologically, economically, and so on. That these two things are heading up. The realities of technology is going beyond it. It's going certainly beyond it because it excludes the subject. But we can also say too, there's something else happening too, where the concept of technology doesn't recognize transformations which are happening. If we did some of the big divides that have happened, one of the other consequences of this split is the divide which was in social theory until very recently, between what they call the realms of work and interaction, between instrumental action on one side and everything to do with interaction, dialogue, communication. Picture it like this: a realm of language, dialogue, communication, technology, instrumental action, and work. And that seems logical, or at least to social scientists seems logical. But the moment you think of the 20th century, all of a sudden you think, hang on, just a minute, what about the communications industry? And what about interactive technology? So in fact, look what we really have today. It's that these two spheres have begun to kind of pass into each other. Technology passes into the sphere of communications, interaction. Interaction moves down into the realms of technology work. You can't actually split these apart. What we also actually see is that the biggest split of all, the subject-object split, no longer becomes viable. We're in a different space. And that different space is rather nicely encaptured in Jay Mahon's couple of paragraphs he has in that reading that I gave you from him, where it's reduced to 2 sentences. The designed artificial world that envelops us, let's say the technological world, is coming alive with communicative possibilities, communicatively, I would say even wider sort of human possibilities. We're drifting into a new alignment with technology in mind and body, more immersive, encompassing, and confounding, both for our bodies and for those technologies. We're entering, Jaina says in the next paragraph, taking some of his lines out, into an age of uncanny technologies. And we're thinning the boundary between human and machine. So this is you can read. And James relating this to the objects, as you know, from, if any of you have looked at this, his piece comes from the little essay he did for the Talk to Me exhibition catalog at the Museum of Modern Art last year. He's talking in relation to these new, what we might call the new kinds of objects. So what does this tell us? It tells us that we're here. It tells us that we're roughly where Daniel Callahan said we were back in 1971. When we speak about technology, this is another way of speaking about man himself in one of his manifestations. So in a sense, becoming human is actually discovering that technology belongs to our human essence, not to the essence of technology. This is where Kevin Kelly and Kurzweil get it. It might be the opposite way around, wrong way around. What we get out of this, or what we get out of kind of where JMR is a whole lot of new kinds of objects. Revital Cohen's piece called Life Support, which actually is a speculation about breeding assistance animals, from guide dogs to psychiatric service cats, which can establish a natural symbiosis with patients who rely on them. Can animals be transformed into medical devices? This project proposes using animals bred commercially for consumption or entertainment as companions and providers of external organ replacement. The use of transgenic farm animals or retired working dogs as life support devices for renal and respiratory patients offers an alternative to inhumane medical therapies. Could a transgenic animal function as a whole mechanism and not simply the supply of parts? Could humans become parasites and live off another organism's bodily function? Now, how on earth, when you think about it, do we class an object like this? We put it now in the realm of, like, this is from the Royal College of Art Design Interactions Programme. We put it at the art school speculation, but if we have to try to classify this, it no longer fits within any of the categories we want to put it. It's not design, it's not technology, it's not art. What is it? I don't think it's within these categories. I think that's what's interesting about this. It can't be encompassed. We have to think. Think a bit. Now let me just finish. I promise you I'll finish in 2 seconds. I know this has been very long. So what we say is that these kinds of peculiar objects are kind of hybrid. They can no longer be encompassed by the limitations of the concept of technology. It implies that we need a more comprehensive conception of what we still call technology. We need to fit it into a wider context, back into making somehow here. And we need to do this because we cannot solve the problems of technology within the concept of technology. Take Sharon Lanier's essay, which I was going to focus on in this. Lanier makes really 3 crucial points in that paper, and it really is worth reading, and especially for deriving design criteria. He makes 3. One is the trivialization and the reductionism inherent in technology. He says some of the forms of internet at the moment tend to pull us into life patterns that gradually degrade the ways in which each of us exists as an individual. And throughout that piece of writing, he gives quite a few instances of that. The second theme he looks at is locking, the capacity of particular forms of technology to lock us into systems which are then very difficult to get out of. Systems with directional implications that set us in directions we may not wish to go. Third point is, it's a very interesting one. He points out that how technology works below consciousness. This is an echo of the Adorno's piece. Technologies don't use persuasion to influence you, he said. We tinker with your philosophy by direct manipulation of your cognitive experience, not indirectly through argument. We make extensions to your being like remote eyes and ears, webcams and mobile phones, and expanded memory, computers. These become the structures by which you connect to the world and other people. These structures in turn can change how you conceive of yourself and the world. So 3 really interesting concepts there. Reductionism, lock-in, and technology working below consciousness, not through argument, without reflection. Looked at from my perspective, I would say that all of these 3 things are absolutely consonant with technology. Technology will lock in. It will turn the forms of doing something into the form of doing something. It will give you a singular instead of a range of possibility. Technology will tend to be reductive and trivialization. It will become one-dimensional. And it does work below consciousness because technology nearly eschews reflection. In technology, you do and you think in relation to doing, but there is little step back to reflect upon what it is you're doing. So structurally, we would say, technology, what Lanier is complaining about is actually endemic to the technology. What the internet pioneers managed to do is to start up some systems which kind of evaded that. And if people want to read a lovely account, actually, of internet pioneering, there was a really good interview in the Financial Times this weekend with Tim Berners-Lee. It's a very intelligent interview, just like overlooked, informal, but very smart. By the way, Sven mentioned The Economist last week. I've mentioned the Financial Times as easily the best newspaper left of the world. It's the only one that is really, if you like, accurate. Because people in finance want actual, if you like, not just facts, but want to comprehend accurately what's happening. The Financial Times is brilliant. It's much better than the New York Times. It's recommended. And it's international, it's very good. But that's just a point about where if you want sources of good information. Now the argument would be then that one cannot solve these problems technologically. We have to then need to force technology to become something other, to become kind of hybrid. We have to start being able to think of technology as an impure act. Later on I will say that design is lovely, not because it's pure, but because it's impure. Impure meaning that what design does is to negotiate with a real life, and that's messy. And I think technology has to be made to become messy, to negotiate. It has to be something closer to design. Not design can be, not design as profession, design as that capability for that negotiation. So the work of thinking technology, utilizing technology, is how to think of it in this new kind of hybrid form. And how to think of technology such that the relationship to the subject enters into the constitution of technology. The problem with nuclear power is that the subject is excluded from it. You make a nuclear reactor and then you think, how the hell do we make it safe? Do you see what I mean? It's external. All nuclear ways of keeping nuclear systems safe are external to the configuration of the system itself. We surround reactors with walls, we have safety regulations, and just more by accident than by good luck, there has not been a major nuclear meltdown. Chernobyl was the worst. 3 Mile Island back in 1971 was very close. In Pennsylvania, very close. The reactor in Japan, in the tsunami just 2 or 3 years ago, that was very close to major. Incredibly lucky. But that's the problem, that the subject is outside. So how do you put the subject inside the constitution of the technology? That's our need for the future. So we need a wider approach and more concrete means. What you'll get, and in fact this course is then designed to think, what you'll get in the next 2 or 3 weeks is thinking the wider approach, technological futures, artificial futures. We've got Ed Keller talking next week on the technological futures, and then I look at the concept of the artificial. Gemma looks at the concept of the global scale. We then move down into talking about design as a capability, and in the next week look in detail about persons and things and mind, things and systems. That's what we're really looking at, and how we can configure those, how we make new frameworks and stuff. Okay, on that point, exactly an hour. Thank you.
Inclinations, but it's more